everyone, it's Tuppence. So the date of this video going out is the 1st of October, and that seems like a pretty good excuse to start with some Halloween projects. Now, I don't really do Halloween so much in my house, or at least if I do the cute version. When I saw this little ghost witch mould, I just thought, yeah, that's me to a T. I think it's going to make some great decor on my mantle, perhaps with a tea light in it. So I'm going to concentrate on the hat first, and I need to add some colour. I've got the holographic silver chrome powder from UV Resin, and I've also got the purple. I'll use these to add some colour to the hat, and then I can back that in black resin. If I pull this back, you can see that there is a sort of indent for a buckle and a band that goes all the way around the hat. And for the ghost, there is a little star and a wand. And for that, I'm going to fill in with some gold glitter and UV resin. And I'll do that in a bit, but I'm going to concentrate on the hat first. To start with, I've got some makeup brushes, and I'm going to start with the buckle first, because that's the smallest area. And I'm going to use the holographic silver for that. I'm just going to check that my brush is nice and clean, and then I can pick up a little bit from the lid. And now I just have to try and access that area. So this is a super squishy mould, and if I try and hold some of it back, it's not the easiest for you to see, I know, but actually if I pull the mould back and then push up from underneath with my finger, it's giving me a little bit of a support, and I can press the brush into that area. Make sure that I get all of that powder brushed in. You can see I've used very little mica in here. And that's because the hat's going to be made of black resin. So anywhere that there is escaped mica, it's going to show up like a sore thumb. And anywhere that there is mica on the mould, if I try and put the purple mica on top of it, it's just not going to show. It won't stick. So I don't know if I've got mica on that centre panel or not. I can't really see. But I'm just going to make sure that there isn't anything loose and that I've covered everything I need to. Make sure I go around the edges, and okay, that's looking pretty good. So now I'm going to add that purple mica. And as I say, I'm not really sure whether the middle of that buckle has got any of the silver on it. It has, because that purple is not sticking. So there's got to be silver there already. So I'm going to clean that off with a cotton bud and a little bit of 99% isopropyl alcohol. Just sprayed it onto my mat, and then I can clean off the mica that is in the middle. Try not to remove the mica that I've put around the edge that I do want to keep. And I might as well clean up what is on top of the hat as well. As I say, if I put the black resin in there, you are going to see those stray dots of silver anyway. Get it all nice and clean. And I have taken out a little bit of that silver in the buckle, so I'm just going to add that back in. That's all right. Okay, so now when I put this purple in, it should stick to that centre panel. There we go. All right, I'm going to speed this up and carry on painting this all the way around that band. Now I need to do another cleanup. So this generated a lot more mess. The top edge is pretty easy to see where that ends, and you do have a line to follow. But the bottom just seems to blend into the brim, and because of its closeness to the brim, I've got a lot of loose powder down underneath this edge. So I just need to clean that up again with a cotton bud and isopropyl alcohol. That's all cleaned up now, and I'm going to pop this over to the side and let that alcohol evaporate, and I can concentrate on this ghost and its little star wand. I'm going to use some UV resin. I'm trying the craft resin at the moment. It is really nice. I'm going to put some into a little silicone cup because I want to add the glitter and make sure that I get that mixed in. And I'm using gold ultrafine glitter for this. I don't know the brand name. It's something I've had for a very long time. Just going to stir that around with my silicone tool and make sure that is all mixed in. That's pretty good. Right, I also have my UV torch, and that's part of my UV bonding resin kit from Let's Resin. Right, I'm going to push the center of that back so that I can get access to that star. And now I need to fill this in. I'm going to try and show you what I'm doing and fill it in at the same time. But obviously I need to keep this fairly level and flat, otherwise the resin is just going to flow out of that area. I'm going to drop the resin in a little bit at a time using the silicone tool, and then I can spread it out until it reaches all of the corners and fills that star. So I've just dropped a little bit on the side, and now I'm taking a silicone tool, I'm going to remove that and try and get the glitter off of that surface. Okay, I can set this partially with my torch. I do need to be really careful that I don't pop this out of the mould as I'm moving it around. If I break the seal, then any resin I pour in there will flow underneath and hide that star. I'm going to add another layer to make sure that the colour is deep enough. I'm going to use the same resin for the stick as well. And once all this is full, I'll again partially cure it with the torch. And then I'm going to pop it underneath the UV lamp to make sure that it is fully cured before I get ready to fill this with resin. Okay, I can now just pop this centre through and do it really carefully. I don't want to knock that out of place. And then I'm just going to leave that there and not fiddle with it. I'm waiting for my resin to finish mixing up, and then I'm going to add some Aurora powder and glitter. And I think I can pour this one in one go. Although it's deep, it's not particularly wide. This, however, I'm going to be putting some black resin in, and I'm going to pour this in multiple layers because I think this is just too deep and it will flash cure if I use the same resin as this one. This, I think, is going to be okay because the walls are quite thin. Okay, I have 6 ounces of craft resin mixed up, and I'm going to add this golden flash Aurora powder to it. So I got these as a pack of 6 from Temu, and if you're ever curious about anything I'm using, check my description below and you should find links to as many of the products as I can find. Okay, I'm going to make sure that I stir this in and break down that powder, make sure it gets mixed in. And I'm also taking this opportunity to make sure that my resin is mixed. So I did use the Resiners dual head mixing machine to mix this up. And that means I need to make sure I scrape the sides and the bottom just to pick up any resin that might have been missed by that paddle. And I've got my moulds sitting on the tray of my Resiners curing machine so that I can cure them in 2 hours, especially as I need to do layers for that hat. Okay, this is mixed in and I need to add some glitter. I plan on using some of the resin in the hat as well, and I don't want any glitter in that. So I'm going to pour the glitter directly on top of the ghost mould. And this is a little bit risky because when I pour this in, it could just stay in a clump. But it should distribute evenly into the mould. If I pour this resin on the top, it's pretty light, so I'm going to put some in and stir that around, mix it in. That way I don't have any glitter in the resin that I want to be putting in the hat. Although I've probably just picked some up on that stick. Right, I'm going to really gently squeeze the edge of this now and try to get any bubbles out of the rim. But again, I don't want to move that star and break the seal of the UV resin. So I'm just squeezing really gently and keeping my fingers right towards the bottom. Once I've gone all the way round, I'm going to carefully put this down. I need to top this up. Just going to push a little bit more of that glitter down. And now that there's enough resin to reach the level of the hands, I'm going to give that a squeeze as well and make sure that there aren't any bubbles trapped in there. Just being really careful with this one near the wand. Now I can top it up. almost there, and that's pretty good. And I used about 4.5 ounces for that. So I should have 1.5 ounces left ready for the first layer of the hat. Okay, I'm just going to take a micro brush stick and try and coax out any bubbles that are hiding underneath this rim, because it does curl over slightly. You're likely to get some bubbles stuck. And as I haven't run this through any kind of debubbler, there's definitely going to be bubbles in there, especially from all the stirring and from that glitter as well. So I'm just going to give it a minute or two and see if it settles down. Give a chance for the bubbles to pop, and I think you can see that actually it has settled down a little bit. So I do want to just add a tiny bit more and level that out. As this cures, it will shrink back a little bit anyway. So if I just make this slightly domed, then that should be fine. Okay, that will do. And this leftover resin can be the first layer in the hat, but I'm going to want to change the colour of that. So I'm going to use a little bit of black pigment. The one that I am using is from Apex Resin, even though the pot does say just for you online, and it's the jet black pigment paste. I'm going to give it a stir around because I haven't used this for a while and it has been sitting on my shelf. I've speeded this up, that's not me going crazy. And then I can scrape most of this off of my stick, and this is all I'm going to need for that. Giving it a good mix in, and I'm scraping the sides to make sure that there is no raw pigment in there, that it is all incorporated. And even though I've got that Aurora powder in there, you can see just how black that's going to look. Okay, so I'm just going to put this into the hat, and hopefully this is going to fill up slightly more than halfway. Because it's basically a cone, it gets wider as it goes further up, which means it's going to require more resin. So I'm hoping this will go more than halfway. I'm going to scrape all that I can out of this cup. And that looks like that's about the last of it. The end of the hat curls over, so again I'm going to give this a squeeze and try and get any bubbles out, and then I'm going to start these curing. Okay, they've had just over 2 hours curing. I'm going to add the next layer, but I noticed on this one that I've got a bit of a flash cure going on, and I'm really surprised at that because this is the deeper one and I really thought it would be for that one. It seems to be fine on that side but not on that, so I don't know whether it's got anything to do with the UV resin that I put in that wand. It could also be that that side was facing the middle of the machine and therefore it got the warmest. I really don't know. Either way, I've got a problem that I'm going to have to resolve. I think it'll be alright. I'm hoping it hasn't damaged the mould, but we'll see. So I'm going to deal with that later. I'm going to set this aside so that it can cool down, and then I'll look at what I can do to fix that. But in the meantime, I want to add my next layer. I've mixed up just over 3.5 ounces of craft resin. I've added the black and I've added a little bit of this Aurora powder as well. And I'm hoping that this is going to be enough. I really wanted to fill this mould in 2 pours. The brim of the hat is wavy and some of the waves are level with the top of the mould, which means that you do have to fill it in order to get the resin up into those areas and squeeze any of the bubbles out. I didn't have enough no matter how much of the cup I scraped out. And so I had to come up with a workaround. I either had to mix up some more and refill it, which was risking it flash curing as it was getting pretty deep. Or what I could do was put some pieces in the mould to increase and raise the level. So I used every scrap of old resin that I have, pieces that had gone wrong, bits that I've broken off of other pours, scraps that might have fallen into the tray, anything that I could find. It did raise the level of the resin a little bit, and I was able to get some of that into the waves of the brim. But I used everything that I had, and it still wasn't quite enough, so I needed to find something else. So one of the pieces that I put in there was a shell that was made of foam clay, and that kept floating, so I hooked that out, and I put in chunks of glass. Now these are plant pot fillers. I've used them recently in one of my frogs. I'll link that in the description below if you're interested in seeing it. But I put these great big chunks of glass in there, and that really did help to raise the level of the resin. it means that I'm not going to have to mix up anymore, and it also means that I'm not adding to the depth of the resin. Most of what is in here is either already cured resin or it's chunks of glass. So that won't cause a flash cure, even though I am raising the level. And hopefully I've raised it enough that I can get all of the bubbles out of the waves of the brim. So now I just need to pop my machine on and cure this for 2 hours. So I'll see you for demold. Okay, these are all cured now and they've had a chance to cool. So I'm going to try and get this ghost out and we can see if it's all right. So I'll speed this lid up. The mould is super flexible, so you just need to roll it back. And the wand looks pretty good, and that came out fine. So there's nothing wrong with this other than that lump. It looks fine, it doesn't feel as though it's blown. I really can't explain it. The wand does feel a little bit sticky, so I'm going to need to cover that, and maybe that has something to do with it. I really can't explain it. The mould itself doesn't look deformed. It doesn't look damaged in any way. It's pretty firm. Yeah, I can't explain it. So I'm not going to waste this. I am going to fix it. I need to fill in his eyes, and I just need to clean up the bottom as well as address that interior piece. So I'm going to demold this piece now. Again, the mould is nice and flexible. It's a little bit more difficult trying to get this over the waves of the brim, but once you do, it's pretty much plain sailing. So I've got a few micro bubbles there. Let's take this the rest of the way off. And that's looking pretty good. I really like it, but is this gonna fit? I didn't think it would. I think obviously it's become deformed. That lump is not going to make it fit. So I need to do a little bit of surgery, I think. So I'm just going to hold the lid up and see where it doesn't fit, and then I can start to mark that area. I'm going to use my craft knife. I'm just going to slice off some of this edge, which I need to do anyway, and I'm sorry that is out of frame. And I'm just going to slice some of this edge so that I know that this is the area I need to take some off the side. So the knife isn't sharp enough to remove all of the sides that I want to, but I can use it to deburr that sharp edge along the bottom of the hat. So for the main body of the ghost, I am going to use this drum sanding bit that is on my Dremel. And as you can see, it is kicking up quite a bit of dust, and even trying to shield it with my hand, it's going to make my craft room really messy. So I'm going to take this outside to sand. And as you can see, the hat now fits. I sanded one side, and that was enough to fit on. The white speckles are resin dust that are highlighting the micro bubbles. They're on the bottom, so I'm not going to worry about them, but I can fill those in with UV resin in a little bit. This, I've taken most of that lump out. I haven't taken it all out, but I've got rid of the worst of it and just sanded back on the top, and that allows the hat to fit. So I've cleaned out all of the resin dust, and I just want to deal with those scuff marks because it's pretty dull on that area where I've sanded. It doesn't match the rest of the inside. And I'm going to deal with that by giving it a coat of UV resin. This is the craft UV resin. So I'm going to put a blob on there. And I'll spread that out with my gloved finger, making sure to coat where those scuff marks are. And that should be enough. So I'm just going to let that self-level and get rid of the marks from my fingers. And then I'm going to cure that underneath the lamp. Alright, the shininess is restored and he just needs to have some eyes now. And for that, I'm going to use some black UV nail gel. I've made a cradle out of a tea towel, and I'll use the micro brush stick to fill in the colour of the eyes. So I'll put a blob into the eye, and instead of spreading it out with a brush, which is a little bit chunky, I'll just use the stick to move that around and fill in. Once I've spread that out to fill the shape, I'm going to give it a partial cure with a torch, and then I can go on and do the same to the other one, and also to the mouth. UV nail gel is usually protected by a top coat, so I'm going to use some UV resin in place of that, and I'll just coat both the eyes and the mouth and cure that properly underneath the lamp. I also used the UV resin to fill in the micro bubbles that were along the underside of the hat before curing it under the lamp. And here he is. If you notice a blue light, that's because I've got something curing underneath the UV lamp just off to the side. But the lid fits really nicely now. It's a little snug if you get it in the wrong position, but it does go on and off really nicely. And I think, to be honest with you, you wouldn't really notice that there was any kind of an issue if you looked in there. It's a little bit misshapen, but you certainly wouldn't know that I had the problems that I did. And I managed to save 4.5 ounces of resin. I love the glitter around the top of this. I do wish I'd had some a little bit more throughout the body and certainly some along the bottom. You can see it's speckled, but I think it is so cute and it's going to be really pretty on my mantle. I'll probably put a little tea light in there, just a battery operated tea light, and hopefully the ghost is going to glow if I do that. So I hope you've liked this. If you have, please go ahead and give me a thumbs up, comment, share, hype if you can, and subscribe if you haven't. It is free, will cost you nothing. All you have to do is click on the button. You're going to help my channel and you will be able to find out what I'm going to be making next time. So, until then, thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye.